Yeah.
It's tortured children, and it's not working, as you point out. Again, last month, they set a record for arrests at the border of migrants. By the way, during the 2016 campaign, President Trump promised to prioritize the removal of, quote, bad hombres for deportation. Remember that? But the New Yorker reports that Trump's chaotic immigration policy of rushing and then canceling raids against families has some ICE officers longing for the order of the Obama years. President Obama was never popular among the rank and file at ICE, but the detailed list of enforcement priorities he instituted in 2014, which many in the agency initially resented as micromanagement, now seem more sensible. One ICE officer said, "One person told me, I never thought I'd say this, but I miss the Obama rules. We removed more people with the rules we had in place than with all this. It was much easier when we had the priorities. It was cleaner." Since the creation of ICE in 2003, enforcement was premised on the idea that officers primarily would go after criminals for deportation. President Trump, who views ICE as a tool to showcase toughness, has abandoned that framework entirely. Quote, "I don't even know what we're doing now," one officer said. "A lot of us see the photos of the kids at the border and we're wondering what the hell is going on," Mika.
Well, a couple of things here, and then I want to go to Susan Page. I mean, first of all, we showed Jeff Sessions announcing this policy. We know that John Kelly did as well. It is clear this is a Trump policy. You cannot put this back on Obama in any way. The facts are there. You also have to look at Melania and Ivanka, who both, Melania went to the border to check on the children when the separations first came out. Ivanka went publicly because, of course, her brand is women and children, but she's taken that off her brand, children. She said this was a low point for her, this situation with the separations. So what do you think this is? When you have children in squalor, with the flu spreading rampantly around them, with children in danger on your watch.
Lies.
So for Melania and Ivanka, this is not being best. This is not a good look. And history will show. You will go down as history as having done nothing about this. I hope that you can live with that. Susan Page, the ICE agents, the folks on the ground who are trying to deal with this and who are confused by the policy, confused, I think, morally about what it is they're being asked to do and the images they are seeing. Talk about how, you know, this is where the institutions, I worry, falter a little bit in a situation like this, because institutions are made of people and policies need to be clear and based on moral groundings.
And, you know, the president had actually announced a big ICE raid planned for mass deportations, and it was after Nancy Pelosi called him and had a 12-minute conversation that he just agreed to put it off. You know, we talked earlier in the hour about the potential power of Robert Mueller testifying before Congress. If you want to talk about the potential power of an image, think about the picture that the Associated Press released yesterday that showed a man crossing the Rio Grande, drowning his 23-month-old daughter with her, who also drowned, with her arm around his neck, clinging to him in those last moments of life. That is the kind of photo that has the potential to really, I think, affect and inflame this debate, and to affect even the views of the president. You know, we've seen President Trump be pretty responsive sometimes to the pictures from Syria of children who had been killed by chemical weapon attacks that prompted him back. I wonder if this has the potential to either for personal reasons or for political ones to make the administration change course to at least some degree.
Well, you know, the administration did change course over the past few days in a few respects. One, they moved the children out. They fired the acting head of border control. They moved 100 children back into those facilities. I only hope lawyers can follow up to make sure that it is more sanitary this time. But Nick canceled the ICE raids this past weekend. There has been some movement, and we should be grateful for that. But Nick Confessori, this image that the Associated Press published yesterday, let's put it on the screen and show people. This is the direct result of policy in the United States of America. This is a direct result of Donald Trump's zero tolerance policy, which sounds tough, but which ICE agents themselves are saying, that making them doubt what they are doing as law enforcement officers trying to keep our borders secure. Because, Nick, this is the result of that policy. And I repeat again, and if you don't believe me, Trump supporters, you can just look at the Trump administration's own statistics. As the ICE agent said, Nick, under Barack Obama's more humane policy, where this was more managed and this was more controlled, and people weren't dying like this in the border, you actually had the fewest illegal crossings in 50 years, in half a century. Now, as the ICE agents say, there is nothing but chaos and suffering on the border, and it's all because of Donald Trump's policies.
Well, Joe, that picture, it's very hard to look at. It's the most profoundly disturbing pictures I've seen from the entire crisis. It tears at the heart. According to the Associated Press, the man swam across the Rio Grande. He took that risk because he wasn't being allowed to present his claim for asylum, which is his right under U.S. law and international law. So, yes, it is a consequence of a policy decision from the Trump administration to try to prevent people from claiming asylum. Look, it actually matters what's said at the top in policy and policy making. What the president has talked about for 2 years now is to describe these people trying to come here as criminals and mooches and people who are up to no good. And that's going to filter down to the people who are working on the front lines, and it's going to affect the priorities and the decisions made on the ground. It's also important to note that what's happening here is a consequence of things that are happening in El Salvador and Costa Rica and Guatemala. If you look at that terrible picture of that dead man and his daughter who drowned trying to get here, it underscores how bad things are for them and their family and their friends back at home, and why they are taking the risk to get here. And we're probably not going to see a big change in the crisis at our border if we can't find some way to help there be a solution back home in Central America that will make conditions there possible for folks to actually stay home. They're coming here because even having their kids in those centers and taking the risk of drowning is a better fate than what's behind them.
Well, and Willie, as Nick pointed out, this man wanted to present himself and his daughter for asylum. He has that right under American law. For those people that would say, oh, well, he shouldn't have been trying to come here illegally anyway. Now, presenting yourself for asylum is legal, and it has been legal. It's what Ronald Reagan talked about in his farewell address to America, that's what kept America vibrant. And that's what also made us the last best hope for a dying world. Donald Trump has even extinguished that flame. The result of that, where they can't even present themselves for asylum, is what we see in that picture.
Yeah, there's a policy called metering, where the number of migrants allowed to come in is decreased by a lot under the Trump administration. And the migrants know that. They know that it's probably a better way to get into this country by crossing the Rio Grande than by waiting in that line, a line that you may never get to the front of. And Donnie, I would just ask, as you look at that picture, I would ask the President of the United States as a human being, I would ask his family as human beings, is the man lying in that picture with his 23-month-old daughter wrapped in his shirt, is he a bad hombre? Or was he leaving El Salvador because he wanted a better life in the United States of America? Is that man right there a bad hombre lying there with his daughter face down in the Rio Grande?
I can't remember being affected by a picture as much as this. It's as a dad, as somebody we talk about this. You know, we use the word immigrants and we use the word Central Americans and Mexicans, and I think so many. This is sad to say. So many people in this country just almost feel them as different.
Yeah.
And if you see that as different, if you can't picture yourself as a dad and your child jumping in after you and your arm raised around you, that you're not human. And this image has to stay. I do believe this is an image that will stay and should stay. And if you can't, I don't care where you are, I don't care if you're a racist, I don't care what, if you can't feel that, imagine the backstory that went into that, and not be affected by that. You're not a human, and Donald Trump, if you can't feel that, see that, understand that as a man who has children, then you just don't deserve to be leading this country.
Well, and Donnie, if you read the report of witnesses and the story of how this happened, the man had his wife on one side and his child on the other, and they were drowning, and he brought his child and put her on the shore and told her to stay there. And then he set back to get his wife, but then the daughter felt so nervous away from him, she jumped into the water again, and he tried to save her, and they both died. I mean, the desperation that this family was enduring before they died. I mean, just to members of the administration, this is such a disgrace. This is such a shame. This is such a dark time that this is where we are. This picture really symbolizes where we are right now, Joe.
I remember after Katrina, I remember friends from my church and in Pensacola, First Baptist Church, Pensacola, and friends from across Pensacola, Northwest Florida. I remember evangelicals across America sending money to us. We would go over, and when we went over to Mississippi and Louisiana, I was moved by the number of evangelical organizations, Catholic organizations, Jewish organizations, religious organizations that were coming together and doing what the government was not doing at that time. It was extraordinarily moving. Beautiful. And as somebody that was raised in the Baptist church, it was something I was very proud of. It gave me great pride that of all the bad things that were said about my church, about being an evangelical Christian, that in this time of trouble, it was people from my church, people who worshiped like I worshiped, who along with other faiths were on the front lines to follow what Jesus had demanded of us in Matthew 25, to feed the hungry, to clothe the naked, to give a cup of water to the thirsty, to bring hope to the hopeless. I see these images, and then I hear some of those same people saying, well, not my problem. They're coming here illegally. And it's shocking. These are people that perhaps they've never read about the Good Samaritan in Bible study, or perhaps they've never read Luke 17:2, where Jesus talks about that if you do a child harm, it's better that a millstone be wrapped around your neck and you be thrown to the bottom of the ocean. Or when Jesus talked about when people were pushing children away because they were beneath Jesus, Jesus said, let the little children come. And I'm not here saying let the little children and their extended families come to America illegally. I've always said we are a nation of laws. And the first thing you should do when you come to America should not be illegal. But if we now are closing the gates to this country for even those seeking asylum, and then callously saying that because their skin is brown, that they mean less to Jesus, mean less to God than white kids, that is a perverted and twisted faith that has absolutely no connection to what Jesus taught in the Gospels. Reminds me, yesterday, Russell Moore. Thank God for Russell Moore. Russell Moore with the Southern Baptist Church talked about the importance of us focusing on these children, and was attacked by Jerry Falwell Jr. Jerry Falwell Jr. said well, first of all, Russell said the reports of the conditions for migrant children at the border should shock all of our consciousness. Those created in the image of God should be treated with the dignity and compassion, especially those seeking refuge from the violence back home. We can do better than this.
That is it.
Russell lifted that directly from Matthew 25. He lifted it directly from the story of the Good Samaritan. To which Jerry Falwell Jr. shamefully wrote, "Who are you, Dr. Moore? Have you ever made a payroll?" Wait.
What?
I'm sorry.
What the heck is he talking about?
Have you ever built an organization from any type of scratch? What gives you authority to speak on any issue?
Whoa.
That is so. I mean, I don't have to even say this. That is the antithesis of what Jesus taught. This is straight out of Jim and Tammy Faye Baker in the PTL Club in the 1970s and 80s, who would regularly bilk my grandmom of money.
Yep.
Once a month. It's just, if you want to know what's wrong with evangelical leaders in the age of Trump, do nothing more than read Jerry Falwell Jr.'s text and look at the picture of that young girl desperately clinging to her father in her final moments of life. We'll be right back.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.